When a poor creature found itself hopelessly trapped between sharp rocks, its desperate cries for help echoing through the coastal silence. But as fate would have it, an unexpected turn of events was about to unfold, forever altering the young orca's life and precarious situation, the desperate cry for help. One early July morning in 2015, off the west coast of Canada, Eric Keane, a dedicated whale researcher, was sailing with his team on a ship, conducting a study on fin whales. Suddenly, an unusual and haunting cry pierced the serene atmosphere. The cries were coming from the shore of Andrew Rocks, from a large outcrop. An instinct told Eric that something was wrong, and he quickly steered the ship towards the source of the sound. As they approached the rocky shore, Eric and his team were greeted by a heart-wrenching sight. A young orca was in distress, helplessly wedged between sharp rocks that protruded from the water. The poor creature was evidently trapped during the low tide, and there seemed to be no way for her to free herself. Her cries for help were loud and desperate, reaching out to anyone who could hear them. Without a moment's hesitation, Eric contacted the local environmental group Whalepoint to inform them of the stranded orca. Janie Ray and Herman Muter, experienced marine life advocates from Save Our Seas, received the call and realized the urgency of the situation. They knew that they needed to act quickly and gather all the help they could to rescue the young orca. A race against time. Janie and Herman were well acquainted with Eric and often collaborated with him on various research projects. They were returning to their base from Hartley Bay when they received Eric's call, and they knew they had to act immediately. Along with heading towards the stranded orca, they also contacted Gitgaat Emergency in Hartley Bay and Fisheries and Oceans Canada, both marine organizations, to make them aware of the young orca's plight. As Eric and his team cautiously approached the distressed orca, they were careful not to startle her further. Directly attempting to lift or pull her off the rocks could cause serious injury, as the sharp-edged rocks could cut through her skin. Moreover, the orca was already bleeding from her chest and tail. Janie and Herman's arrival provided additional expertise and support to the rescue efforts. They instructed Eric to keep the orca cool and wet until the tide rose again, giving her the opportunity to free herself. Time was of the essence, as the tide would not rise again for another 8 hours. Using a makeshift water pump made from a hose and tape, Eric and his team ensured that the orca remained hydrated and cooled. They soaked sheets in seawater and carefully laid them along the orca's body. As they worked, the orca's cries gradually became quieter, indicating that she was beginning to trust the humans trying to help her. Whales weigh so much that they can become crushed by their own body weight, making it difficult for them to breathe. To prevent this from happening to the stranded orca, the rescuers diligently worked to keep her wet and comfortable, the unwavering rescue effort. The rescue team knew that protecting the orca from the harsh sun was crucial to her survival. While the weather had been overcast all morning, the sun eventually broke through the clouds at noon, intensifying the heat of the day. The sun posed a significant danger to the orca, making the rescue efforts even more challenging. As the hours wore on, the rescuers worked tirelessly to keep the orca cool and wet, exchanging dry, warm blankets for cooler, damp ones. They couldn't help but imagine the dire outcome if Eric hadn't heard her screams and if they hadn't responded promptly to her distress. With the sun's rays growing stronger, it became essential to protect the orca's delicate skin from the heat and dryness. One of the team members approached the orca cautiously, placing a wet, cool cloth over her head while being careful not to cover her blowhole. This act of care was pivotal in maintaining the orca's strength and hope for survival. Despite the challenges and the strain on the rescuers, they remained unwavering in their determination to save the stranded orca. However, as the water pump eventually broke, the team had to change the damp sheets more rapidly to avoid endangering the orca's life. Fortunately, with the failure of the pump, the tide began to rise again, bringing hope to the rescue team. After an exhausting and arduous 8 hours, the tide had risen enough to start the rescue operation. The team removed the sheets from the orca's body and head, and the pillowcase from her dorsal fin. The orca's survival now depended on her ability to swim free from her rocky prison. With a few mighty thrusts of her tail, she broke free from the rocks and rushed back into the sea. The rescuers erupted with joy and relief, celebrating the triumphant rescue of the young orca. She had finally rejoined her family, escaping with only a few scratches and shock from the harrowing experience.